Thank you all for joining us. See some familiar faces already. That's exciting. And if you're able to, no worries if you can't, no pressure. If you want to put your first name in the chat and maybe the hat that you wear, write your role. Are you a student? What student are you visiting from? Are you a professional with the children, an educator, a teacher? Are you a preschool teacher? Please let us know who you are. We'd love to see who's joining us today. And again, no pressure, just if you're able to. Thank you, Berta, for kicking it off. Student at PCC. Raquel Diaz is with us. Thank you. Appreciate all of those who are able. I see Destiny. Destiny is representing Harbor College, my college. Thanks, Destiny. Some ELAC students. Beautiful. Harbor students. Amazing. Thank you all. I do want to honor our time together. So in just a few seconds, we're going to get started if you don't mind. And please, this is a very interactive, no formality presentation. So at any point, if you have a question, if you missed something, if you have a comment, please feel free to stop me. There's no formality here. You don't have to raise your actual or virtual hand. You can just blurt out and say, Liz, right? Hold on, slow your roll. I do tend to go 1,000 miles per hour and I've had lots of caffeine. So please don't feel embarrassed to stop me in my tracks. I am Liz Lopez, actually Lizette Lopez. That's my formal name, but that sounds so formal. I am not one for titles. Please, we're on a first name basis here. So Liz is short and sweet and how I like it. Feel free to call me Liz. I am a professor of child development and education at Los Angeles Harbor College. I also do some consulting on the side. So I wear several roles and hats. And it is a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for allowing me this honor, everyone. I'm very excited. Are we ready to kick off? Yeah. Okay, this is the part where you all enthusiastically jump out of your chair and say, yes, let's do this. This is the last session, by the way. Yeah, I see Marini. That's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Just in case you missed it or just to refresh you, this whole discussion is really going to center around technology and neuroscience. That is a fancy phrase to mean research based on the brain. Hence the title, A Mindful Approach to Teaching Children in the Age of Screens. And we know that technology is a hot topic these days, right? So I really wanted to spend some time just talking about best practices and bringing in the science and having sort of like a North Star to guide us in our work with young children. So why don't we start with the obvious, okay? The children that are coming into your classrooms today, right? Or that for those of you that are not in the classroom yet, maybe in your homes, are not the children that resemble classrooms or homes 5, 10 years ago, right? And if you're here and present, right, you can nod your head, you can give me some sort of sign that you're alive and present. I think that's pretty apparent. And for one, COVID-19 really just did a number on us, right? It wreaked havoc, it messed us up. And that would totally entail a discussion that would take probably a year's worth of venting and unpacking. So we're not even going to touch that. But what we are going to focus is one little nugget, one little element of how this has transformed children. And of course, how they learn, and most importantly, how they play. And that one thing, that one nugget or that one element we're really going to tackle and focus on is technology. It's huge, right? And how many of you are parents? By a thumbs up, a nod, a star, a reaction. How many parents do we have in the house? Okay, a few. Oh, that's great. I see Tracy, some parents. Beautiful. Okay, if you're a parent, I think we could finally just take a breath after COVID, right? And realize that we're not under the same amount of pressure or stress that we once were when COVID hit, correct? And I think for some of us, technology was really our savior. It entertained our kids while we showered, while we worked, while we made lunch, and while we were basically on survival mode, right? So here's the part that I really want to hone in. During this time, or during all time, right, children go through these normative, and that's just a fancy word that means these typical or normal experiences that are tied to negative emotions. So for instance, ugh, I'm bored. This line at lunch is taking way too long. Or, hey, that kid is playing with my toy. I had it first. This is so frustrating. Give it to me. Give it, give it, give it. Or for many of us, it's teacher, 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 teacher. My teacher isn't paying attention to me. I think we could all relate. Now, all these little tiny exposures that we give our kids just naturally, right, without even thinking about it, is really how we tolerate, or how children learn how to tolerate these negative emotions, these technically negative experiences, right? Let me see if I can switch the screen here. And here we are. There we go. Pardon me. Can you all see the screen? I just want to make sure we're all. Oh, beautiful. Okay. So then what happens is that very quickly the adults learn that technology makes it super easy for us as adults, right? Why do you think that is? If you're able to unmute yourself, or type it in the chat, why do a lot of adults resort to technology? What does it do for us or the child? Check the chat. Again, if you're able to. Okay, so technology provides dopamine hits. Okay. Yeah, Marini, it's convenient, it's accessible, right? It, like Berta says, it gives us answers to many questions. So in many ways, it provides that instant gratification that we often need, right? At the tip of the fingertips, I can order something for lunch, or I can, get the information that I'm seeking. And for us as parents, when we do that, right, with children, it really calms those emotions, those negative emotions, and almost instantly, right? We can say, here, 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 a child is, crying at the grocery store. Oh, I'm so bored. I'm tired. Okay, 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 here's my phone. Here, have it, have it, have it. And poof, instantly, that emotion seems to just go away, or at least it seems like it does, right? But really, what's really going on here is that it's distracting children from that negative emotion. So in many ways, that child is not getting that exposure. They're not really learning how to work through the problem on their own. In other words, working through the obstacle, the challenge, right? That negative experience. And they're not learning how to tolerate those negative emotions and move on to the next thing on their own. So to recap this in short, they're becoming less resilient, and they don't build the grit. I'm going to use the word grit, right? That kind of like, I can push through, I can get this done, I can handle this, I totally can, that is needed to be able to overcome these things when things don't go their way. And these are the children that have very limited capacity to really regulate their own negative emotions on their own, or to tolerate time independently from an adult or something that entertains them. Short and sweet, they have become dependent, seeking on something else or someone else to entertain or stimulate them. And again, these are the children that are coming into your classrooms, or maybe in your homes, right? Children who cannot tolerate negative emotions, children who really struggle to work independently without the aid of an adult or a tool or something concrete that is able to entertain them, and children who are less persistent and less resilient. And here's the shocking part, okay? Hold on to your seats here. Children, and let's say folks under the age of 24 or 26, naturally struggle with these things already. And you can blame this part of the brain, okay? Let me shift my screen here. The frontal lobes. So if you could kindly just place your hand right over here over your forehead. Right over here. Okay, folks, I am going to introduce you to one of the most important parts of the brain. They are the boss, the head honcho, the CEO of the brain, the frontal lobes, right over here. They're literally not on your forehead. They are behind your forehead. But in our work with children, our work should be guided by these right here, these frontal lobes, by development and neuroscience, not by standards, not by mandates, not by subject matter. This is what we use as our North Star, as our compass to really nurture respectful and mindful and inclusive learning environments. So we're really going to hone in on this part of the brain because it is so important for learning and development. And it really is going to transform your practices with children. But these are the frontal lobes. Remember these because we're constantly going to come back to them. So here's our other slide right over here. Still able to see my screen, right? Yeah. Oops. Not if you are.
We see the frontal lobe screen now.
Perfect. Okay. That's what we were missing. Sorry, I think I skipped ahead. There we go. This is sorry about that. I'm navigating through several tabs here and chat. Now, in order to understand these frontal lobes, we really have to just dissect the brain, right? And not literally, please, I don't want to scare you. Oh no, I signed up for this. It's a discussion, not a dissection of the brain. Now, the brain or the frontal lobe has two parts. And this is where it's really important. These two parts are first, the thinking part of the brain. And the thinking part of the brain has all of this, okay? All of this that you see here on the screen. Let me see if I could, right? Planning, organization, time management, working memory, and self-monitoring. Let's unpack each of these little nuggets here. Your planning part of your brain, right here still, make sure that you penciled in today's meeting so that you were able to attend and say, you know what, I got a plan. I want to go to this session with Liz, right, about mindful approaches when it comes to technology. The organization piece is, let's say you're in the classroom and you need to plan your materials for a lesson or a lecture and get ready for your students. I'm going to make sure I have everything so that when I walk in on Wednesday morning, I have everything planned and ready to go. The organization piece is same thing. I've got all my materials, right? I'm organized, I'm ready. The time management piece is making sure, oh, you know what? I wanted to do Play-Doh with children and I don't have Play-Doh. So I have to make sure that I carve in a little time so that I can pick up some flour because I'm all out of flour. And that's my main ingredient for Play-Doh. And working memory, excuse me. That's your short-term memory. And let's say, oh, yeah, I do have to pick up the flour, but I want to make sure that I pick up other ingredients because I'm not sure if I have everything. And the self-monitoring part, which is, you know what, this is a lot of things that I need to remember. I should probably write all of these things down because I need to know exactly what I need. Otherwise, I'll forget, out of sight, out of mind. And that's just the working part of your brain, right? The thinking. Now is the behavioral, or call it the emotional part of your brain, which really allows you to have all of these skills that you see here under managing your emotions. Number one, impulse control. And we know how important that is for young children under the age of 8, right? This is huge. Let's say for you, it would entail, you know what? I should really control myself and stay away from those empty praises. I know the research on the good jobs, the prizes and the tokens and the rewards. And I know that those sorts of things really break down motivation and resilience in children. I got to control myself. I don't have to give out empty praise. I stay away from those good jobs. Oops, did I change the screen or not? Oh, sorry, I'm toggling here. So that's just one little aspect, right? The self-control or impulse control. Now the regulating of emotions. Oh my goodness, look at that child. All that glue. Oh my goodness, no. I just need to go in there and take that glue away from them. Taking a deep breath, right? You can handle this. That child is just experimenting, right? Learning how to use those hands and fingers and squeezing the bottle. Then comes in flexibility, okay? All right, I can take a deep breath. They're experimenting. Friend, let's just squeeze Mr. Glue's tummy just gently, right? So a little bit, because a little dot of glue holds a lot. That's the flexibility part. Task initiation, which is basically, okay, I'm going to continue to take a deep breath, right? Allow this little one to explore. And then, you know what? Maybe I'm seeing that my little friends here need a little bit more strengthening of those fine motor skills. And those are any movements with the hands and fingers, right? So I'm going to provide more activities so that they're able to strengthen those fine motor skills. Maybe spray bottles, and we could do a really engaging art activity. That's task initiation. Persistence. I know. I really want them to come in already having these skills ready, right? Which don't happen until much later. That takes almost until the age of 8 because it's related to the brain. You can't rush this, right? Fine motor skills are the last to develop because they're on the outer part of your body. So that takes a while. So that persistence piece is development is not a race. We're going to continue to work on these skills. There's no rush. All of that just in this little part of your brain. And I've summarized it. It goes way more in depth. I think we can definitely say that these frontal lobes pack a punch, don't they? And this is for adults. I'm using examples for adults. Now imagine how that translates to children, right? And I've already highlighted how these super duper important skills that are needed for learning and development don't necessarily develop all the way or mature until the age of 24, 26. Folks, that's 2 decades. 2 decades, 2 decades to be able to master, right? And I wouldn't say masters, because there's some of you who are still 24, 26 and over and still have a hard time with some of these skills, right? But let that simmer for a bit. 2 decades to truly develop these skills, right? And I know you're thinking, okay, so what does this relate to technology? How does the brain tie in? Where's the connection? Because I'm really not seeing it. Why are we having this discussion? Here's where we tie it all back. If the screen is being used to distract children from experiencing, or let's say going through these normal, typical negative experiences that are needed for children to be able to build that resilience and grit that we talked about, for them to be able to overcome obstacles or challenges when things don't go their way, right? We are hindering the development of child development in short, right? We are hindering the development of emotional regulation and all those super duper skills we just touched on that are related to the frontal lobes that are so essential for learning and development. That's what screen time or technology does to children. Right? That's huge, huge. Let me switch over. So just to summarize what we've been discussing, right? That technology piece is related to the brain. When a child starts to have this huge meltdown or big emotions, or just those normal day-to-day experience that we just talked about, right? Where I'm so bored, my teacher's not paying attention to me, and we hand them a tablet, a phone. We turn on the television, whatever technologies we're using or devices, and say, here, stop it, here's my phone. Then poof, the child has been pacified. The screen appears to have fixed and appeased those big feelings or negative experiences, right? But really, oftentimes when children reach out in this manner, it just really means that children are having a need, right? When children are needy and clingy, they're often just looking for interaction, attention, and of course, entertainment at a time when an adult or someone cannot provide them that particular entertainment or time. And here's where the research really gets loud and clear. Children, or all these little exposures we talked about that children go through naturally, right? Being bored, waiting in line, right? Not getting the color that I wanted yellow, and give it to me. Those things, right, without even thinking about it, is how children learn how to tolerate negative emotions. In other words, they need these experiences. That's what's going to build their resilience and grit. When we don't allow them to go through these experiences, here, appease instant gratification, and we provide that instant fix for them, right? And we calm that negative emotion, or at least we think it does, it works, but it really doesn't, right? It really breaks down resilience in young children. How are you holding up so far? This is a lot of science, so thank you for bearing with me. Okay? Perfect. So in other words, what we want to do is we really want to build in children healthy social and emotional well-being, right? Especially that emotional regulation piece. When children acquire emotional regulation, they're able to control their emotions and their body, right? That's the secret sauce to learning and development, especially for those of you that work with children under the age of 8, right? During these years is really what we value, or what is of great importance, is how we teach children how to navigate through conflict and build resiliency or lack thereof in the face of challenges, right? And basically how you nurture children in this process of being able to build grit and being able to resolve conflict or bounce back from it. So to just summarize from the last few lessons, right, here we go. The children of today, right, at a very early age, are not building resilience. Let that simmer in for a bit. They are being denied the opportunity to work through their emotions. And in many ways, the children of today are going through this because of the adults. And this is the part that is really difficult to say, right? I'm saying it in a way not to point fingers, but for us to reflect deeply about our practices in our homes and in our classrooms, because now adults are becoming the barrier of children's development and learning. What feelings come up for you when you hear this? When you hear that, I know for me as a parent, yeah, it's very easy to sometimes say, here, stop, right? And we constantly have to be very vulnerable and reflective and think, is this okay, right? Okay, what can I do? How can I stop? But what feelings come up for you as you start to think this? And as you're pondering about this, if you're able to, okay, I've got this little nifty tool here. If you have another device or on your current device, if you want to open up another browser and go to menti.com and use this code right over here, 43358952. And if you want to just type in your feelings, what feelings come up for you after hearing that most adults are becoming the barrier to child development, that when we do this and hand off, how does that feel? What feelings come up for you? And I'll project it on this screen here. Okay. So when you're ready, you can go to menti.com, type in that code, pull up that code one more time. There, I see it coming in anger, sadness, almost if we're abandoning children. Yeah, this is a mighty word here. Thank you for those. And if you're not able to pull it up, you can definitely type it in the chat. That way, at least you can partake. A few more seconds here, and I'll allow everyone to. Anger, neglect. Yeah, that's huge. I know that's a very strong word, right? When we hear that word neglect, it's mighty. It really packs a punch. But in many ways, if we know, because this is the new information, right? The science is there, the data is there. And if we know this, and if we deliberately become the barrier to child development, can that be considered neglect? Yeah. Ignored, wrote Gabriela. Absolutely. So good to see you, Gabriela. Worried, frustrated, questionable, maybe our practices, questionable practices. Thank you all who typed in your responses. I know that it's definitely a social risk, right? To put this in. Yeah, Destiny added the same thing. If we know that it's impacting children, we know the effect of it, and we still do it, that's neglect. Concerned, absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody still working on it? If not, I'll move on to. Okay. So I'm going to toggle back to our other screen here and resume. Reflective, absolutely. Okay, now you're able to see my other screen, correct? Thumbs up.
We're seeing the Mentimeter screen.
There we go. That's the screen I
Ah,
want.
Now human stimulation.
Thank you so much for working with me with all these windows open. Right. And I really wanted us to name those emotions. By the way, I'm I'm a geek when it comes to the brain, right? I love to connect everything to neuroscience. So you're going to see a lot of connections to the brain. One of the mighty organs that we have in our brain too is tucked like right in the middle of your two lobes. So think of your brain like this, right? Right lobe, left lobe, right in here. And right in the middle, if you were to just split your brain in half, is a little gland named the amygdala. And it's almost like the size and the shape of an almond, like the ones you eat, an almond. And the amygdala is so mighty because it likes to hold on to fear, right? It's responsible for emotions, but especially like it likes fear, it relishes on fear. So it'll hold on to that fear and say, hey, remember that time when you went on that elevator and your foot got stuck or your dress got stuck? Or remember that one day when you went for a hike and you saw that snake and you were scared? It holds on to all those fearful emotions and memories. But one of the things about the amygdala is when it's in a state of fear, it becomes really aroused, like this. But in order to bring the amygdala from this aroused state, and bring it back down, all you have to do is really just name it. Name your emotions. I'm feeling scared. This is very fearful. I don't like this, right? And as soon as you do that, right, the amygdala goes from like a state of arousal like this, like, I can't handle this, to back down again. So think of how important that is for children to do, right? And oftentimes how we say, don't cry, stop it. No, don't cry. When we deny them that opportunity to name their emotions, that amygdala continues to stay in that state of arousal. So really just naming these emotions out loud, as we were talking about this really potent, data, helps us go from that hurt, ooh, that sounds like a jab, ooh, to a state of regulation and saying, this is something to ponder about. This is really something to think about. Now, the other thing that we run into when it comes to technology is how screen time at an early age really messes up with the interaction and stimulation piece, right? We know that actual human stimulation, and by that I mean interactions with adults, right, is needed for a healthy brain to grow, especially during the first 5 years of life, right? And if a child is handed a device or is placed in front of a screen, then there's no human interaction or stimulation. And I know sometimes adults argue, but Liz, it's educational. They're learning their ABCs, they're learning their colors. It's good for them. They're learning, right? It's good. As educational as a show may be, nothing replaces human interactions. Nothing. Zero, zilch, nada. There's no eye contact, there's no touch, there's no human voice. Yes, even if they see shows on there and there's someone speaking, it is not the same thing. It does not replace that rich dialogue that happens back and forth between an adult and a child. And actually, that dialogue that happens between a child teaches children how to turn take. Right? They learn, when you talk, I wait. When I talk, you wait, right? Those are the unspoken rules of language and dialogue and conversation, but none of that happens with a device or a screen in front of them. So human interactions, stimulation with another adult or another peer, and love literally grow the brain. Isn't that something? Yeah. So when it comes to brain growth, here's a fun fact. 90% of a child's brain is already developed and complete by the age of 5. How many of you work with children under the age of 5? Show of hands, the reaction. Okay. Few of you work with children under the age of 5. I mean, really ponder about this statistic. 90% of a child's brain is complete by the age of 5. Think of how mighty this is. The brain experiences the most growth during the first 5 years of life. What a privilege it is, right, to be a professional working with children during this stage and period of development, because we have been entrusted to serve children at or during one of the most critical periods of their development. So this is something that we shouldn't take lightly, right? It's an honor to be able to serve children during one of the most important phases of their life. And during these times, right, as the brain is growing, these adult interactions become very, very important, right? The children will naturally reach out to adults either through not only, right, though, that contact and that dialogue, but even babies do it, right? When babies begin to babble, when they begin to coo, like goo, goo, right? Those pre-linguistic vocalizations that we call those vowel sounds. When vocabulary finally kicks in, then they could say, look at me, look at what I can do. And they try to reach out to get that attention, that connection and stimulation with the adults. But in the absence of those responses or those stimulations or those interactions, or if they're not reliable, right, or if they're not appropriate, then let's say if the child is placed in front of a screen or a device or technologies, right, during the brain's architecture, when wonderful and amazing things are happening in the brain, then development does not occur as expected. And this can lead to major gaps in learning and behavior. And again, this is such a mighty statement. So really just take a few seconds to process all of this, because I know it's a lot to take. Right? So I think that by now, some of you are probably wondering, okay, so what you're saying, Liz, is that technology is bad, right? And I hope that that is not the message that I'm trying to reinforce. I don't like to look at development or things as good or bad. I don't see development as it being good or bad. I don't see children as being good or bad. They're doing the best they can with their abilities and their age and stage in development. And that's not the message I'm trying to reiterate. After all, there's just not one type of technology, right? I think we have iPads, we have iPhones, we have laptops, computers, we have apps, children's programming, YouTube videos. I mean, there is just not one type. So saying that technology is bad would almost be equivalent to saying food is bad. Depends what kind of food. If you're eating processed food, sugary food, processed food, then yeah, that kind of food is bad, correct? But if you're eating lean meat, greens, and whole grains, then no, that food is not bad. And then we're not even talking about amounts or quantity. How much time is the child consuming? Is it 1 hour a day? Is it a few minutes? So we run into a lot of things. So we really can't say that technology is bad, because that's really a blanket statement, right? There's just way too many factors to consider. It's not that clear cut and dry, right? And I see Destiny's hand up. Did you have a comment, Destiny? No? Just raising it from before? Okay, well, if you think of it or you still want to add, you can definitely unmute yourself. But here's where we can really just rely on the science here. The studies on language development in children have really provided us with some enlightening information here. So I'll give you one, for example, right? Because I can just spend all day talking about experts and the science and the data. One particular study surveyed 1,000 parents. Okay, that's a huge number, by the way. So when you're surveying 1,000 parents, that's a lot. That's a big deal. And they surveyed 1,000 parents of 2 month to 24 months, 2 years of age children, right? Who were typically exposed to television shows and programs. Like think of Baby Einstein, ABC Mouse, Brainy Baby. Those were the old school of mine. Now the typical is Miss Rachel. And I know I get a lot. What do you mean, Miss Rachel? They discovered that those children that were exposed to these types of programs, right, television or on an app or on a screen, right, had very low language development. I'll repeat that one more time. Very low language development. In fact, for every hour, 1 hour of daily viewing or listening, the child experienced major, keyword here, folks, major decreases in language skills. And the science there is pretty blatant, right? Early exposure to screens during those first 2 years of life is crucial and has a major impact in language development. Whereas those parents who read to their children, right, let's say at least daily for at least 30 minutes, showed a 7-point increase in language development. We go back to that interaction stimulation piece. When a child is in front of a device, right, phone, whatever it is, there's no stimulation, there's no back and forth, there's nothing. But when a parent is reading to a child, then that interaction and stimulation piece is there, right? So as educational as parents or some adults may say this program is, right, and they swear up and down, yes, they're learning, they learned how to read, it doesn't. The current body of research suggests that many of these programs really do not produce any changes in cognitive development. In short, it doesn't have an effect, a positive effect in children. What's worse, some studies are even showing that they have negative effects. Negative effects. Take a few minutes to really ponder about there, a few seconds, right? And what I mean by negative effects is that when children are viewing some of these programs, right, they're constantly being bombarded with overloading information. Picture here, bright colors there, right? It's like so much that it can lead to negative effects, right? It can not allow a child to concentrate or focus because they're constantly used to that stimulation back and forth. So they come into your classroom, your space, or your home needing that constant stimulation, that bombardment, right, of sensory input, that it's very difficult for them to be able to develop that ability to concentrate, or it messes with their visual memory, their sense of imagination. It interrupts their sleep habits. We're not even talking about their sleep, right? That blue light that is emitted from screens fools the brain into thinking that it's daytime. So that blue light, right, it says, it's daytime. It's not ready. You're not ready to go to sleep. And when that happens, the release of this mighty hormone called melatonin, right, is not released. And melatonin, fun fact, is what makes you kind of feel drowsy and gets you ready to go to sleep. So if that's not being released, you have children on that screen for like until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., because that mighty hormone that is allow you to unwind and go to sleep and rest, that's it. It's not being released. So take home message here, folks, is that children learn and take in all this enormous amount of information daily from just real world experiences by interacting with adults, other peers in their world and their environment. And it's super mighty and it's very important. But when the same material is delivered through visual media, a screen, a technology, a device, very little is learned. That's kind of like the take home message behind this entire discussion, right? Yes, it can be entertaining. Yes, it is easy, right? But nothing replaces human interactions. Say that one more time, just in case you missed it. Nothing replaces human interactions. The sad reality is that children are going to be exposed to technology. Let's be honest here, right? They are, whether they're at school, you know that most children are doing now work, showing videos on a screen very early on. They're spending hours behind a screen. So now your dilemma as an educator or a professional serving with children is to decide on how you can incorporate screen time that is appropriate into your curriculum or learning experiences. So the remainder part of our presentation is really going to focus on adopting best practices when using technology, right? The message that I'm trying to send here is not that technology is bad, stay away from it. When used in appropriate ways, technology can be used in ways unimaginable that really spark creativity and curiosity. So here's where that mindful, get it? No pun intended, approach comes in to teaching children with technology. We're going to start off with just some general rules of thumb, okay? Number one, we avoid using technology in passive ways. Passive means I'm sitting back, I'm not doing anything, I'm just kind of staring at a screen, right? My body is sedentary, it's not moving, it's not active. When we're doing this, then children are passively taking in information. And Howard Gardner said, or used a term, he said that then children or technology or the learning becomes app dependent. We're relying on the tool, we're relying on the technology, whatever it is, to drive the learning, and it's disconnecting us, the adults, from the child. So there's no interaction there. For instance, I'll give you a little photo here. The use of iPads and Chromebooks in the classroom. And I know this is going to really, right, poke a lot of people because now we're seeing, especially LAUSD has introduced a number of iPads in the classroom, and they're often, or Chromebooks, used to teach children in passive ways, to view videos, complete work, teach a lesson. And again, let's be real here. It's convenient for us teachers, right? It is. It provides us a break from teaching. It often grades our work or children's work. It's easy. It takes little effort. It takes little planning. It takes very little intention. And sometimes we may think that we're using technology in active ways. Like, I'm not going to give them an iPad. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to put them something so they can move. I'm going to put them a song or a video, right? So that they can dance. But if we project that video on a screen, what happens? the children are glued to the screen, right? So instead of dancing and singing, now they're looking up at the cartoons, at the images, because that screen, right, provides that like drawing them in. So now, even though you had the intention of it being active, it becomes passive and sedentary. So really, what would be a good way of avoiding that? We still want children to be active. Let's say you found a really neat song on YouTube or Go Noodle for those elementary school teachers. What would be a way around it where we can still encourage children to sing, dance, but not necessarily, right, use the screen? Anybody got their hand up? Let me see if I could. You could type it in the chat. You can blurt it out loud. You got it, Alejandra. Use the audio, but turn off the screen. Absolutely. That's the best way. As soon as you turn on that screen, right, the direction is going to go towards the images on there. So take a Bluetooth speaker, right, play it on audio, and that will encourage the children to listen versus direct their attention onto the screen and having the screen be a source of distraction. That's what we really want to avoid. So when we work with technology, we really want to include technology that allows us, the adults, to use it as a way to spark creativity, discovery, right? And all those great things that we want children to do. That's the active portion. Now we're not becoming app dependent, right? We're using it to create these wonderful experiences for investigation. So the technology, we're not at their mercy. Right? It's not driving us. We are driving the technology, but that requires us to be very intentional and use out of the box strategies here to encourage these experiences. So here's where I'm going to show you a few of these, okay? And I know you're saying, Liz, that is not a technology, but anything with the screen is a technology, right? So let me show you this one, the overhead projectors. I know some of you think those are ancient artifacts. Do you even get them? But you can create so much with these overhead projectors. They pack a punch in the sense that you can use them to not only create like really intriguing shadows and tones in your space, especially if you are having a lot more children who are coming into your classroom with sensory sensitivities, right? They either hyperstimulated or hypo, that means overstimulated or understimulated, and the lighting really impacts their ability to focus and concentrate. This is a way around it where you really create these beautiful shadows in your space and really create a bright and busy, visually busy space into something that's a little bit more soothing and calm. You can also project these amazing creations. So if you can see right over here on the overhead projector, they've used these tiles, these round tiles that connect, these connecting tiles, and those are projected onto the screen here. See what they look like? Yeah, it's very intentional. There's also 2 light tables here that can be used. You can see these right out here. Yeah. Take a look at those. Those 2 light tables that are placed in between that overhead projector also create some amazing shadows. They reflect light in a more intimate way. They are also technologies as well, right? It's not just computer tablets and laptops. Really, anything with a screen can be deemed a device or a technology. But also the other portion of it is that think of how it empowers a child to see, I made this. That's what I made, and having it projected in the classroom so that everyone can see. Right. The other thing that we're doing is we're also saving a ton of paper, because think of how much paper we save on those dittos and worksheets that are often posted there. Now you get to project it on the screen and have it showcased. It really makes for a beautiful creation. Here's another, right? If you want to post messages or have children, right, encourage literacy and writing. Their writing can be projected onto a white or blank wall to encourage printmaking or writing. Here's another way you can see it. It says, welcome to room, what is it? Oops. There we go. Let me click to the other screen. Here's another idea. Now we're using magnetiles and shapes as well here to reflect all these amazing shapes. And in here, right, now we're seeing a projector being used as a backdrop, almost like a screensaver, right, in a virtual world, but here it's being projected onto a wall. I really like the use of these mini projectors. I'm going to show you one of them. See if you could. So this is something that I have. It's a mini projector. Right? It has a stand, so you can easily prop it somewhere. It can have a USB drive that you can put here with different images. So one thing that I often do in my classroom, or when I was back in the day in the classroom, I taught second grade and toddlers, is I would put a screensaver of dinosaurs, like a Jurassic Park in the background, and then add these amazing dinosaurs, and children would create this habitat, play out this environment, and you could use it sort of as a backdrop for the children to invite them to this play. And these are so convenient. This one I bought a while ago on Amazon, and it was about $60, $70 back then, but I'm sure these have gone down in price. This is a mini one. There's also larger ones, so if you want to get a larger one as well, I think the larger ones are even cheaper nowadays. You can get one as cheap as $40 on Amazon. But you can project anything on here, even a video in the background, right, where they're using it. Like I would use a background of Jurassic Park, like dinosaurs stomping. It made for these great invitations. Questions about any of this so far? And you could see it here in the block play. That same projector can be used as well to create light and shadow, as we've been discussing. So in this particular photo, you're seeing the projector on a blank white sheet, like a bed sheet. Right? And this child is behind it, creating this beautiful like image, and the children are drawing what they're seeing. So this is an art provocation invitation. See the paper here. Here's another one. Here, there's another creation of a child with watercolors being showcased. Again, these make for great conversation starters for parents too, when they walk in and say, what is this? Or for your administrators, what do they do all day? Play and do art. They mixed colors. This is science. Right? This is what we're doing. Here's another one. Here's a child who created a drawing, a creation, and it was projected on the wall. And now he's talking about his creation, what he created, and telling a story, storytelling. And this one is a little bit more complex. So in this case, there's two technologies being used here. You've got the laptop, but the laptop is being used with an overhead, like a projector as well, that's projecting these amazing textures on the wall. So you see this right over here, right on this wall. And then you also have this little nugget over here that shows a camera and a light and projecting this image here to make it almost just like showcase it and highlight it. And again, see how this is done like almost like an afterthought, right? The technology or the tool is not driving the learning. This is just there to provoke or invite children, right? Like, ooh, what is this? Let's see what we can do to spark that curiosity. And here's another one here. We really have a lot of tools. So here, there's a couple of tools that I really want to hone in on. One are the drawing tablets. And I really like these drawing tablets because they're literally just tablets with no screen. You can't do anything but draw on them. So when you draw on these tablets, they will reflect whatever's being drawn if you connect them to a projector on a wall, on the ceiling, on a screen, any of that. And again, we go back to showcasing children's creations, right? I also appreciate how many technologies are being used here. I mean, take a look here. Can you spot all the different technologies here? All the devices? Do you see them? Anybody want to spot a few of them? We definitely see the laptop there. This that you see right here, can you see my cursor? Right, that's a drawing tablet. That is what allows the child to draw and showcase those creations. And it's also being showcased here on the laptop, on the screen. Right? There's also a video camera here. Yes, Itlali, you noticed that. And of course, the projector, which you see right over here on the left-hand side. Here's another alternative. So if some of you say, I really like the idea of a drawing tablet, and if you really want to put those iPads in the classroom to good use, so children are not using them to see videos, you can also use just a regular iPad or tablet. I'm going to show you mine right over here. Oops. Like this. And on here, I'm going to show you, there's a drawing application that you can use. So I'm going to do a little bit of screen sharing here so that you can see what that looks like on my end, okay? See if we're able to do this. Okay, oops. Show you here, this is probably easier. So you take your iPads, right? You leave them out in this sketching, right? It comes with the iPad. You don't have to purchase anything else. And children can draw on here. Right? You can start off with your finger, oops, with a pen. Can you see that? And it could be used to draw, and then you can just showcase this by plugging it into an overhead, a projector, or a laptop so children can see their creations, right? And they can even be turned into a little video animation as well. So that's a good use of those iPads as well. I do also want to highlight, excuse me, that sometimes there are certain apps or tools that are used, like I'm going to put it out there, Kahoot, Book It, what's another one that's out there? Those are the two major ones, right? And even though these are oftentimes great tools for evaluating children or students or assessments, when used with children under the age of 8, they could really create these competitive experiences with children. And for those of you that work with children under the age of 8, you already know that children are very egocentric, right? So they cannot tolerate loss. It's very difficult for them. So when we introduce these apps, these tools, these programs, these games that have a winner or a loser, and children under the age of 8, right, with those frontal lobe skills are not fully developed, they really have a hard time because they can't tolerate loss. And worse, it really creates these moments where children are competing against each other, right? And we're pitting children against their peers, having them see them as a threat. And we really don't want to create that in our classroom. So I would say those are more appropriate for children who are in junior high, high school, if that, but not children under the age of 8 or in elementary school, because they really just, they don't model collaboration, working together, right? We really want to create a society that models how we can work together and collaborate. And this isn't going to happen naturally or by virtue of, hey, let's work together. We have to be able to provide experiences where these children can work together through things. And this does the opposite. Okay. So here's another one that I especially like. So let me put this down. These are called storybook projectors. These are my favorite, and they're super easy and convenient. So this is a little, it's called the Moonlight projector. This is the type. Can you see that right over here? It comes with a reel. So you know what that reminds me of? Remember back in the day, this is totally going to date me, those things you would have. You buy the reels, which are the story. This is a reel of Chica Chica Boom Boom. You put it in your little mini projector. Whoop, stick it in here. Right in there. You take your iPad or mobile device. In this case, I have a mobile device, right? You download an app with all your stories, and I'll show you how this works. Right. Give me a second while I get this going. There we go. It activates the light feature on your phone or iPad, and then it prompts you to put your projector, align it. So I'm just going to take my projector, my mini projector, align it here, right? And then it'll project the image on a blank wall or screen. So this is great if, let's say, you want to transition your children onto, let's say, nap, and you still want to do some storytelling, right? While the children are laying down, you can just take this, you tell the story, project it on the ceiling, on the wall, right? The children are not looking at the screen. You do have the story here, so I'll show you. So you don't have to memorize the story. Here's the story, but you are looking at it. The children are not. So you're doing the driving of the technology. I'm using this. So storybook projectors are great because it encourages storytelling, but technology at the same time. And it really allows you to connect the two where the technology is not driving, right, the learning. And these are really cheap too. Target had them, Amazon has them as well, very cheap. There's tons of stories that come with them as well. You can also use cameras. Digital cameras, right? This was a provocation that a student set out in one of my practicum courses. I teach the practicum course, and she put all sorts of cameras, digital cameras, right? The roll-up cameras, the disposable one, put a white sheet as a backdrop, and it really encouraged children to take photos of each other, right? Then they created a video, and these are 4 and 5-year-olds. They talked about spatial awareness. Your head is cutting off, step back, right? It encouraged them to interact because one person had to take the photos, right, while the other posed. So it really was a great opportunity for children to collaborate. Here's another photo of. And the last one we're going to talk about is more for those of you that are teaching perhaps older elementary school children or junior high or high school. This is one of my favorites. I also use it with my college students here, and they are called plickers. Plickers are basically cards that you can use, almost like clickers in the classroom, to record children or students' response. So each student gets a plicker card, right, and it has an image like this on the card. And you assign one per student. They come with individual numbers. So if you kind of, squint your eyes a little bit, you can see that each card has a number 2. You see that right in here, number 2. They get an assigned card, and around the card, you'll see letters A, B, C, and D. So I would give one to each student, your number 1, your number 2, your number 3, and then I would put up a question. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to show you the Plicker screen so that you can see what it looks like. All right, and get a better idea of this. Okay, here it goes. So you generate your questions, right? For instance, I've generated this question for this discussion. Can you see my screen? Thumbs up. Beautiful. How much are you enjoying this session? A, love it lots, right? And I would, let me show you. Let me move my camera. Sorry, you're seeing all of my face here. I'm just going to show Stephanie, who's going to hold the card for me up for a little bit. Right. I'm going to spotlight Steph. Here we go. There you are. So Steph is holding the card, right? Steph would hold the card based on her answer. So if she holds it up with the A on top, I feel I'm loving this discussion, right? I would come in with my device. You can have another device, a phone, a tablet. Right in here, you open the app. I come in with my phone, my tablet, whatever it is. I'm going to put it in here. I scan her card, literally, and you can use like up to 100 people. I would scan it like this, and it would record the response and generate the questions. And as I'm getting the answers, like let's say Steph says, hey, I love it lots. Or she can rotate her card to B and say, I'm enjoying it. Right? See how she moved her card? Or she could say C, so-so. Or D, I'm not really feeling it. Yeah, this is not my cup of tea. I scan the card. It scans, it picks up her name. So I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to scan her card really quick. Right in here. Do you see that her light where it says list lit up? So as I'm scanning cards, pick up another card, Steph. Okay. Picked up another one. See it turning blue and so forth and so on. Let's do one more. There you are. Okay. And as I'm doing that, it's also showing on my end who's getting the questions right and who's getting them wrong. So I'm able to say, okay. And then the other neat part is that you can also see a graph of how student answer. And then at the end, reveal the answer. Of course you are loving this session. So Plicker cards are really convenient because it's sort of like a no pressure type of formative assessments too. So if you want to do tests, right, or evaluations, it's a really non-threatening way that is interactive and passive. And again, the adult is driving the tool or the technology, not the other way around. How are you feeling so far? Right. I have tons more to share with you, but unfortunately, we only have an hour together. So I've shown you some of the better ways, right, or the most common ways that you can use technology. I would just leave you with this last little snippet as you go about your day. And if you are pondering on whether I should use this technology, is it appropriate? Is it the best way? Just take these 3 questions and really think about how You can incorporate technology in ways that are active and are best practices. So, does this technology extend the learning in which children are already engaged in? Does this technology cultivate opportunities for, remember, that social engagement, those interactions we talked about, and cooperative learning, those stimulations that are so needed to grow the brain? Does this technology inspire new avenues of exploration and discovery? Right? Is it going to spark interest, curiosity, and discovery? Or is it just passive and they're just sitting back and taking in the information? Let these questions guide you. And always remember, use these here as your compass and guiding star to help you determine what is best practices. That's it. That's all I have for you folks. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Liz. That was awesome. Very eye-opening and such great ideas.
Appreciate it, of
Thank
course.
you. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Gabby. Good to see you again, Hazel. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all. And if you have questions, right, let me know. I'd be happy. I'm going to put my name on the chat. If you need anything, send me a message. Feel free to reach out. There you go. Again, I'm Liz. And the presentation will be provided for you. So if you want it sent, I did provide it so that you can have it. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.